and I'm delighted to be here this morning. And I'm delighted for you all to be here because we've done this now for 7 years, and it's always been very successful. And the thing that strikes me, I think, the most with our crowd, the folks that come, we have a wonderful representation of probation and parole, DAI staff, and then our community partners. And without those three working together, reentry as we know it would not be a success. And so I thank you for taking the time out of your day or out of your work week to be here today. In looking at the schedule for the conference, it promises to be very good. We have several folks that are here. We have Director Lombardi, who I will be introducing here momentarily. And we have Dr. Rotnick, who is from the St. Louis area. If you've not heard him already, you will be very impressed. He's our lunch speaker. And then we have our breakout sessions this afternoon. I will tell you, if you've looked at your schedule, there is one change as far as who will be presenting one of the breakout sessions. Jane Peppercorn is going to be talking at one of the sessions about Missouri Recovery Network. And she is replacing Brenda Schell, who was originally scheduled, but Brenda could not be here. Before I introduce Director Lombardi, I'll give you a little bit of housekeeping. We will basically be in this room throughout the day. This morning we will be here. We'll have lunch here in this room. Our breakout sessions, the one on sex offenders, will be held in this large room, and then the other breakouts will be down this hall, which are to my left. There are bathrooms for both men and women on either side of us and down the hall, as I understand. So we have certainly plenty of opportunity as we take breaks for that. Lunch will be, as I said, served in here. We also have our resource booths to my left. So please check those out as you get an opportunity. There's some really good information there. First and foremost, I want to appreciate or thank Dee Gordon. Where did you go, Dee? Oh, she's hidden on me. Ah, right there. I'm sorry. I want to thank Dee Gordon. She has spearheaded placing and putting all of this together for today's conference. It's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Okay. Let me introduce Director Lombardi. Missouri Governor Jeremiah Nixon nominated George A. Lombardi to the Director of the Department of Corrections on December 18th of 2008. The nomination was confirmed on January 29th of 2009. Mr. Lombardi is a 39-year veteran of the Missouri Department of Corrections, having previously served as the Director of the Division of Adult Institution for 18 years. Assistant Director of that division for 3 years and Assistant Director of that division for 3 years and a Warden for 7 years. As Director of Corrections, he is responsible for the 20 adult correctional facilities, 7 community supervision centers, 1 community release center, and 54 parole offices across the state of Missouri. This includes approximately 11,500 staff, 75,000 probation and parolees, and 30,000 inmates. He was recognized at the December 2002 commencement at the Central Missouri State University with a Distinguished Alumnus Award. And in November of 2011, Mr. Lombardi was presented the first Mel Carnahan Public Service Award from the University of Missouri Harry S. Truman School of Public Affairs. And lastly, he has received the 2012 Region 7 Missouri State Champion Award with the Head Start Association. So I welcome and I introduce Director Lombardi.
Well, good morning, everybody. Great to see you all. And it's an honor and a privilege for me to be here. And I really, really appreciate all the work that you do. This is the reentry situation here, and I really appreciate that. I'm going to talk a little bit off track, okay? I'm going to talk a little bit, I'm in the twilight of my years in corrections, that's for sure. And so, you know what happens when you get to this age? Actually, it says I'm 39 years, this is my 41st year. And then I did 4 years, which I will tell you about in another place in 2005 to 2008. But anyway, so I get to say whatever I want when I get to be this age, this time of my career, and I tend to do that. So I want to share with you a few things that I really am passionate about. When I walked in the front door of the penitentiary in 1972 to start on this journey, there were a total of 3,900 inmates in 7 prisons. And look at us today. 33,000 actually inmates in 20 prisons. And there were only about 7,900, as I remember, probation and parolees. And you know, now there really is closer to 75,000 on probation and parole. And I do a presentation to chambers of commerce and Rotary clubs and others to talk about how we got from that point to the point where we are today. What happened? What are the mitigating variables that increase the population of both prisoners and people on probation and parole? And there are a myriad of issues. I call it the evolution of corrections in Missouri. And if you have a civic group of any kind, a church group, whatever you'd like, I would be glad to share that with them. So just please call on me to do it, and I'll do it. Because I think the more the public understand, the general public understands, you understand, but the general public understands what it is that is at the heart and soul of this criminal justice discipline, and especially corrections and probation and parole. I think it's very, very important. The more knowledge they have, the better off I think we all are. It is why I have developed a partnership award for employers who are willing to step up and hire our offenders. And just yesterday, I gave a partnership award to a business in Piedmont. It's called the Ajinomoto Windsor Company. Obviously, I suppose it got bought by the Japanese, I don't know. I mean, that sounds like it. But this is a great organization that has some 20 probation and parolees working for them. And so I went there to honor them for what they've done. And that's the 20th partnership award I've given around the state. It just happened 2 weeks ago. I gave it to a laundry company in Clinton, Missouri, that also hires our offenders. I think we all understand that there are numerous criminogenic needs that need to be addressed by offenders as they leave, but certainly work has got to be right at the top. If they don't have a job, if they can't work, if they can't get that self-esteem by holding down a job, if they can't show their family that they're worthwhile now, if they can't be the father or mother they need to be, without that job, they can't. And so that's very, very important, and I really support that, and that's one of the ways I do it. So anyway, when I first came into the system, and you know, like a lot of us who got involved with corrections, I kind of fell in the back door. I was working on my master's degree in psychology at Warrensburg, and my major professor, if you can imagine, this is 1971, whatever it was, so here I am, your quintessential hippie-looking guy, right? I got hair down to the middle of my back, I got a beard down to here, and you know, I got my jean jacket, my jeans, my chambray shirt, you know, I've got the uniform of the day, so to speak. And my major professor in clinical, who made decisions about my life, was just to the right of Attila the Hun in his politics. So it was really a clash of ideas at the time. But really, mine never went that deep. In fact, one day he asked me, he said, "Are you a communist?" And I said, "Oh God." I said, No, it doesn't go that deep. This is just what people wear today. So he said to me, "It's time for you to make a decision about whether you want to do an internship or you want to do a thesis. I was done with writing papers. I was done doing a thesis. That wasn't me. I wanted to get out in the field right away. So I said, I want to do an internship. And he said, well, there are two choices. He said, you could go to St. Joseph State Hospital to do your internship there, you know, the mental facility in St. Joe, or you can go to the Missouri State Penitentiary and do your internship there. I think you ought to go to prison. So that's what I did, and that's how I got started in this organization, and I love it. I mean, if you could have told me when I started that 41 years later, I'd still feel the passion and the excitement about coming to work every day and being involved with this organization, I'd said you were crazy. But it has happened, and I'm so, so grateful for that. And it has a lot to do with all the wonderful people that work with me and that are the advocacy groups like you guys, really make it all worthwhile. In any event, one of the first things that happened, I was at MSP for a short period of time. Then I went over to Wren's Farm. Do you guys know what Wren's Farm was? If you were around a long time ago, it was a minimum security men's facility that just across the bridge on Highway 63. It got abandoned in the 1995 flood. And if you go by there now and you take a look at that old building sitting back there, trees are growing out the top of the roof because a farmer put hay in there. And I'm telling you, it is a mess. It looks like somebody that stumbled upon Machu Picchu years ago. You know, it's just really something. But that was my home when I started, and I was playing psychologist. And you know, I was the only psychologist in the entire system, and I only had a master's degree. So that tells you where we've come from then to now. In addition to all the growth that we've had, the sophistication of the services has increased geometrically, for sure. So one day, I walked outside, and this man, 6'9", 6'10", probably over 300 pounds, came up to me, and he looked down at me and he said, "Is you the nut doctor?" And I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "Yeah, I'll be whatever you want me to be." Then I said, "Wait, I might be whatever you want me to be, but I'll be your nut doctor." And there was an oval, and we used to walk that oval. And that's how I worked with the inmates a lot. We walk that oval, we talk and listen and do that. And I did that with that gentleman. And that was one of my first takes at realizing that in addition to the crimes that our people have committed, that they have such need. And so it really showed me that if you show some caring, if you show some compassion, that it can have such tremendous impact on individuals. And I believe that to be true today, and I know you all believe that too because you see it. Caring and compassion are some of the qualities that seem to be missing in a lot of our offenders. And I have come to believe that whatever we can do to inculcate caring and compassion in our offenders, that it's an enactment of criminal behavior. And that's what restorative justice is all about, really. That's what restorative justice is all about. The idea that you, as an offender, get your hands working to help somebody who is less fortunate than you are, and that, in its own way, changes you. And we've seen it. And those of you that are in the field, you see it. You see how that dog has had a tremendous impact on an offender and changed them completely. You see how that garden project has changed people completely. It's really, really critical. In addition to the spiritual things and treatment things and all those other things that we do as well. I just want to say that those things are so critical. So everything that you do, even when a person is out in the field, I want our parole staff in addition to being the supervisors and the helpers to get them jobs and get their family together and get them treatment, that you demand of them to give something back, because giving back is a powerful, powerful tool to make a difference in your life. We all know that when we get back twice as much, right? So please, all of you, whether you're an advocacy group for people or you're a staff member, think about that. What is it that we can do, even with these guys that are struggling, to get them outside of themselves to care about somebody else? And that can be a powerful, powerful tool to make a change in their lives, and then thusly a change in the lives of the community. Because every time we make a change in individuals, we don't know what that impact can be, is, might be. We don't know that by helping that individual change, whether it's restorative justice or whatever it might be, whether it's the spiritual needs being met, whether it's the treatment needs, substance abuse, whatever it might be, if we can help make that change, this is what I want you to all remember. You can be such a tremendous change agent on a day-to-day basis with every single contact you have with a client. Never, never underestimate that what you say, what you do, how you carry yourself with your clients doesn't have impact. It does. And just think about that. If you can, in fact, make those kinds of changes with that individual, maybe you made them a mother or a father for the first time in their lives with their children. Maybe you kept that family together. And really critical issue, maybe you interdicted a future crime, right? Maybe you saved somebody from being raped, robbed, burglarized, etc. Keep that in mind each and every time. Every single contact that you have with an offender counts. Make it count. Keep it in mind each and every time. It's really, really important. Now I want to go on to something that I really am passionate about. And it's something that I talk about as often as I talk about in corrections. And it's not re-entry, it's no entry. Okay? And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? I mean that when I was gone, let me just tell you the story. When I was retired in 2005, after 33 years, I actually did consultant work, which of course, when you retire from corrections, you sort of mandatory, you got to do consultant work. I actually did consultant work with the Facility for Committed Youth in Washington, D.C. It was a fantastic experience for me. I was the only Caucasian person on campus, and I worked with these kids. Mostly I worked with the administration of this facility at this facility. But I also worked with the kids. And one of the things I got to do was to take them to the Chesapeake Bay fishing. Anybody ever been over the Chesapeake Bay Bridge? Anybody here ever been? No? Yes? Maybe you have. Okay. So those of you that have know what an experience it is going over that bridge, because it is gigantic and it is way up there. And so I had a busload of kids, if you can imagine, from the inner city, who for the first time in their lives got to go outside the inner city, go over that Chesapeake Bay Bridge. So all of them went to one side of the bus, and I thought we were going to tip over and go and drink. But we didn't. So my job when I got to the Chesapeake Bay was to put worms on hooks. That was my job. I put worms on hooks. So here's these kids, and they are kids who had done bad things. Most of them violent, disrespectful, whatever it might be. They were awful, and in terms of what they had done in their short lives that they'd been there. But when I came to putting the worms on the hooks, they would come up to get their fishing rod with the worms, and they'd be like this. They'd be like this. And it struck me in my heart. Still gets to me. that they had their childhood stolen from them. Right? They had no childhood. You know, their parents were, you know, their father might have been in prison, their mother out on the street, trying to be raised by auntie or big mama who was doing their best to do that with these kids. They had no chance. Why would we be surprised that they'd end up in the criminal justice system? There was no moral or ethical or religious or anything to drive them in a different direction. And so that really got next to me. That really, really got next to me. And when I went home, I started thinking, what can be done for these children? What can be done for these kids? How do we get no entry? I don't know, has any of you ever heard of Mary Wright Edelman and the Children's Defense Fund? You may not have, but if you have, look it up, the Children's Defense Fund. Mary Wright Edelman is such a champion of at-risk children and making a difference. She's the one that coined the term cradle to prison pipeline. And that's what these kids were. They were in that cradle to prison pipeline, and something needs to be done, right? And this is true. I don't care if you're in an urban area or a rural area. There's kids like this everywhere. Don't have an opportunity. Never learned anything. Bad models, and on and on. And I thought, what can happen? What can we do? What can make a difference with these young kids? And so I started studying that a little bit. Anybody ever hear of the Perry High Scope study? Never? In Ypsilanti, Michigan, years ago. It was a study that took at-risk, and this is the critical piece, at-risk children and put them in two groups. One of them got quality early childhood education, the other one did not. They're probably 50 years old now or more. And the differences in their ability, their education, their income, their ability to have a house, their marriage situation, and the one that we all have a parochial interest in, which is their contact with the criminal justice system was like this. Significantly different. And that drove me in the direction of saying, hey, those of us in corrections, in addition to re-entry, need to be supportive of no entry, and no entry takes the form of quality early childhood education, especially for at-risk children. And I really believe I want you to support that. I want you to be vigorous in that. We all know, and especially with the children of incarcerated parents who are 7 times more likely to go to prison than other kids. So anything we can do to help those children in particular, which I believe we have a vested interest in doing so, we should do. You all know how that growth happened from 3,900 to 33,000 today. What I'm talking about is the long-term investment. It doesn't take away from the critical work you are doing on reentry to save lives now, but please support early childhood education and early childhood trauma interdiction, right? I think if we think about a lot of our offenders, that many of them come from a trauma situation in their childhood. Abuse of every kind, neglect of every kind, observation of domestic violence within their home. And we wonder why they ended up in the criminal justice system. This is part of the other reason as well. So please support the kids. Please support the kids. One of the things that I've done, and I've been sporadic about this, I want to do better, is we have a preschool in our town in Jefferson City called Jefferson City Preschool is what it is. And it's primarily made up of children of poor families. And I hate to say this, but some of the people's children that go there are correctional officers' kids, which says a lot, doesn't it? Unfortunately. And so I go there because I really believe that sitting down with these little kids in preschool and reading to them really can make a difference in their lives. You want to do something voluntarily? go to a preschool, I don't care if it's a church preschool or a public preschool or whatever it is, especially those that have the kids that are poor, and sit down and read to them. That was the most important and impactful experience I've had. And I remember one time I was sitting with these two little kids, one on one knee and one on the other. The brother and the sister were sitting on my knee, and I'm trying to read this book. And the young boy, he's just jabbering away. He sees something and he's telling me all about it. His sister's on this side and she's looking at him, she's looking at him. And finally she turns to me. I mean, these are, I don't know, 3 years old? She turns to me and she says, he talks too much. Anyway, but after I got done reading, that little boy grabbed onto my leg and said, will you come home with me? And that told me a lot. That told me a lot. And very, very sad. Very sad. So, I don't want to take much more time, but please do the best you can with those kids if you can. Continue to do the wonderful work that you absolutely are doing with our offenders that are getting out of prison. Really, really important that we do everything we can to make a difference in their lives. Bless all of them. Thank you.